Your knowledge of contract language is imperative.
You must know what a violation looks like if you wish to be active in its cessation.
It is important to understand that being active and knowledgeable affects your overall bargaining strength.
Together, we can forge a more militant NALC.
Good morning and welcome back to Parcels of Knowledge, the podcast dedicated to delivering knowledge to City Letter Carrier, with your host, the Roseville Wrecking Ball. Today we got the long-anticipated interviews with both Mike Caref and James Henry here on the show. I'm going to make the intros and outros identical so that you can listen to each and every episode and you can take them for what they are and use them to make your judgment. So, without further ado, if you're clicked on the Mike Caref one, you'll be listening to Mike Caref. If you're clicked on the James Henry one, you'll be listening to James Henry. Hopefully, you learned something valuable today, and I'll see you on the other side.
All right, Mr. Henry, here we are on the other side here, and we're going to start this interview. First of all, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. This is James Henry, currently serving as your NALC National Vice President. So I have 37 years in with the Postal Service, and of those 37 actually and a half, I've been representing letter carriers at virtually every capacity you can think of. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you today, Joshua.
It's good to be here with you as well. So, as you already know, we're conducting this investigative interview to get to know you. So, do you know due process and understand its meaning?
Of course I do.
All right. Now, let's just get right into it. Even though it's technically against policy, most letter carriers know it is not a real safety issue to wear and use one earbud. When management wants to play gotcha, they try and write carriers up for wearing the earbuds. If a resolution is submitted at the convention to prove what carriers already know by assembling a team or something that wearing one earbud at a reasonable volume is not a safety issue, will you bargain with management for the policy to change regarding the use of earbuds and Bluetooth?
Obviously, if the resolution passes, it's the will of the membership, and I'm all about the will of the membership. So therefore, the direct answer to your question would be yes, should it pass.
All right. Next question is, do you support publicly shaming USPS for lack of compensation, toxic work floors, and contract violations? And can NLC put together commercials to share online and to the media?
Well, there's several things to unpack here. As far as the first thing here is lack of compensation. The reality of it is here is that I think that it is a shame that letter carriers are not the leaders in the industry when it comes to wages, benefits, and working conditions. So when it comes to compensation, we should not just be on par with our competitors. And you hear often everyone say, well, UPS has $49, so we should be getting $49. Well, if they're getting $49, in my view, we're worth $59 or whatever that case may be. So there's really not a specific dollar amount. Our dollar amount should be based on our worth. I've said this before on other podcasts, and it's something that I believe wholeheartedly in. There is no reason for letter carriers to have to live out of their cars. There's no reason for letter carriers to have to go to the union hall to be able to take a shower. There's no reason for letter carriers to be essentially on par with fast food workers. God bless them and all due respect to them. But when you have uh, fast food workers, such as where I come from, Los Angeles, California, the In and Out burger chain, they're starting out at $20 an hour. There's no reason that we have a union job that the compensation should not be more substantial than it is. We've been going backwards. I said we've been letter carriers have somewhat seemingly have had the Benjamin Button effect, that we've been aging backwards because in 2012, when the TEs were in, they were making $22 an hour. And you have Letter carriers now, CCAs coming in at $20.73 an hour. So as it relates to shaming management, if I'm calling out the truth and saying that we should be making and deserve and demand to be making more, and the Postal Service management takes offense to that, if it shames them, then so be it. They shame. It's not so much as me being anti them as much as I am pro us. We should all be looking forward and moving forward with trying to get higher and better working compensation. The toxic work floor is something that has been in I guess you should say, have abided for decades. Hence the term that was pretty popular, going postal. Why would that been something that everyone can relate to? Even folks that weren't or are not postal workers understood going postal. Why? Because the toxic work environment that we have had and still continue to have. There's no reason at all that letter carriers should be coming to work, spending more time trying to keep their job than do their job. And so those things and those violations will be dealt with head on and stated in a blunt manner that it is unacceptable to treat letter carriers like they have a tail. It is unacceptable for letter carriers not to have a living wage. And if that so happens to shame management, then so be it. Then they're shamed. That's not necessarily the intent to shame them, but what you will always get from me and anyone that's associated with me is the truth. And if the truth hurts, then the truth just hurts. And as it relates to talking about having commercials to share online and on the media, every tool that's at our disposal that is going to advance the cause of the letter carriers should be brought to bear. And I am a huge proponent of making sure that we explore everything and not be concerned as to whether or not it bothers management. I often say, or have said before, is that we have to be concerned and sure that we don't develop the Stockholm syndrome, being more sympathetic for the captors and not understanding what our purpose and what our responsibilities and duties are. So yes, all of the tools that are including commercials and social media, whatever is going to advance the cause of letter carriers, I'm down with 100%, brother.
Good to hear. Next question is, obviously, management benefits by letting us clog the system with grievances for the same violations over and over, which leads to improperly removed carriers and stewards not being compensated for very long periods, if ever. This allows management to intimidate, remain toxic, and ignore the contract. What needs to be done and what needs to change?
Well, as you heard, and it's a very common saying, justice delayed is justice denied. And that's what you're speaking on right here. What needs to make sure happen from the first and foremost is make sure that the process continues, meaning that when we file grievances, that those grievances are not unduly delayed by the tactics that are so commonly employed by management with regards to not providing stewards time in a timely manner, not providing information to the stewards in a timely manner, which sometimes we as union representatives sometimes become complicit in the grievance being delayed by going over and beyond giving management an opportunity to be able to string us along by not giving us that information and under the guise that we're acting or bargaining in good faith. Well, good faith observing goes on both sides. And so when it comes down to it, we need to make sure that the grievance process continues to go. Extensions are an exception and not should be the rule. We should make sure that we investigate to determine what grievances are actually legitimate violations? Is it a grievance or is it a gripe? And the reality of it, so by not clogging the system with uh, items that can be dealt with just primarily uh, going to management and saying, look, this is a violation of the contract. And if they do not adhere to it, make sure that they understand that we will not sit on idly on the sideline and watch things go by. When it relates to continuing to move forward, the step B team is in my view, the backstop to all the grievance issues. Because they're supposed to write decisions that are precedent setting for the installation in which they arose. That's what the contract says there in Article 15. And so if the Step B team also continues to move those grievances along and not allow them to be stagnated and write decisions that informs both parties, the union and management, as to what is expected, we have now an enforcement mechanism. Then if they also render decisions that are based on the file, if management's case is deficient of any evidence that they're trying to, for example, or either side, then those cases should be resolved and not clogging up going forward to the business agent office far as it relates to uh, uh, going, perhaps possibly being impasse or arbitration. The two sides, you need to disincentivize management for sending up nonsense, contractual issues that are not contractual violations from Formal A. And then we need to weed out the junk from going forward to step B. So it needs to be called out. Needs to be called out whether there's a violation or not a violation. And if that is the case, then you will not necessarily eradicate the backlog in a sense, but at the very least, you can minimize it. And so keeping the process moving and making sure that we write resolutions that has teeth to them. Resolutions that do not represent that we're just a tiger with no teeth and claws. Because when you can take a resolution and be able to utilize it, not just now, but in the future, it helps disincentivize just wanton violations. So that is just a tip of the iceberg, but those things are going to make an impact if we as the union stay steadfast in making sure that we get grievances that are grievance resolutions that has teeth to them, that we make sure that we do not get caught up with allowing the grievances or be complicit in allowing them to be stagnated by getting these inordinate amount of extensions, and keep the grievance process moving. And if the grievance process is still being dragged down, then there are other tools that come into play. You have interventions that can be requested. You have labor management minutes that will bring the entire uh, levels, all the different levels, whether it's the local, the district, the area, bringing those matters together so we can make sure that everyone is informed that there is an issue and can work towards making sure that we get the process going and continuing to keep moving forward.
All right. Now, obviously, I'm sorry, I almost did that question again. All right, you have a high position in our union. How do you explain your lack of results when it comes to our compensation, toxic management, and inability to have management honor contracts they have signed with us?
Well, let me tell you this here. You're right. I do have a high position in the union. But for those of you that do not know, I've been up at headquarters now for 3 years. I've been there since June of 22, so a little over 3 years. And when it comes to the compensation, the contractual negotiation, this is no secret. So it's not uh, skirting responsibility or whatever, but I have had zero involvement. And not only just I, virtually every officer, excuse me, at the NLC level, with the exception of the national president. He's the one that negotiated the collective bargaining agreement. He's the one that dealt with all the economics. And so I had no input on that. Like I said, I've been there since 3 years. I have my views on where we at and perhaps what should take place. But ultimately, the Constitution lays that responsibility on the president. And what would happen, should I have been afforded the opportunity, or should I have the blessing to ascend to the presidency, it would not be a solo act. It would be including the entire executive board and getting a well-rounded view and getting opinions from those that are elected as to what we believe is in the best interest of the letter carrier moving forward. I don't think any man is an island. No one can do anything alone. That's why you surround yourself with good people. So this would not be a situation with saying acting in a solo fashion. So by not doing so, there would be, in my view, definitely a higher probability of getting better results than what we achieved this past round of collective bargaining agreement or negotiations.
All right. Next question is, would you consider eliminating NALC jobs that don't impact the city letter carriers directly?
I don't know of any jobs that we have currently that don't um, affect letter carriers directly or indirectly. What if there is waste, then those those jobs should be taken a look at and uh, either repurposed or done away with. If there's a need for additional resources to make sure letter carriers have access to all the representational needs and areas that they can utilize, then we'll make sure that that occurs as well. So if there's waste, yes, but I'm not too much aware of any jobs specifically that don't at least indirectly impact carriers. For example, we have the legislative jobs. They're not directly uh, dealing with when it comes to filing grievances, but it definitely affects letter carriers directly, indirectly, with regards to being able to lobby Congress to get legislation passed that helps letter carriers in every sense of the word, like the Protect the Letter Carrier Act, that's going to make sure that letter carriers um, are in a better work environment, and people are held accountable for attacking letter carriers, and people shouldn't have to worry about whether or not they go to work and or whether or not they're going to make it home. And those that are assaulting letter carriers, that they are aware that there is a heavy price to pay. We are one of America's finest, if not the finest, when it comes to workforce, and we should be treated and protected the same. So um, there are a lot of jobs that can be dealt with, yeah, and we'll just deal with it, as that comes up.
I can appreciate that. Do you support criminal charges for management, for example, manslaughter when their negligence causes death, and fraud for falsified clock rings?
Well, there are laws that are on the books, and if someone violates the law, then the law should be applied. And Article 3 requires management not only follow the collective bargaining agreement, but all laws. So if there's something that management does that violates the law, then the direct answer to your question is yes, I will support criminal charges. When there are certain things, for example, like the falsification, clock rings, and things of that nature, we have contractual provisions that deal with that. And we got to always remember and see things from a global view because the Postal Service policies, there specifically, as you know, the Employee Labor Relations Manual, the ELM, applies to both equally management and the letter carrier. So we have a rule or policy that's in place that a particular provision constitutes criminal prosecution, then we have to know that that would apply to our letter carriers too. So we have to make sure that when we start thinking of things, that we have to think of them on a global view. Because the one thing that I do not want to do is put letter carriers in any undue harm when we can avoid it.
Yeah, I completely understand that. That's a good perspective to have. All right.
Yes, sir.
Assuming you agree that recouping lost compensation to inflation since the 1970s is our best argument for a substantial pay increase in full colas, who will you get to do the math on that to make sure it's indisputable? And do you want branches to submit this request to the National Convention for a vote?
Well, first and foremost, is whoever specifically would be depending on, you know, the specific circumstances at the time. Currently, right now, who we've been having deal with our economics, and who has been there, have been there for years was Jim Sauber. He was an economist. He recently retired over the last couple of years. He had been working kind of part time with the administration. Um, what we would do is make sure, whether it's him or our own, we would get an economist to help us out to make sure we map out those things. We would get duty experts, subject matter experts when it comes to economics that would help advise us, meaning the NLC, and so we can make an informed decision. The inflation, recouping that is something that is extremely important, but it's not the only argument that we have, not just the inflation. Like I said, letter carriers have fallen behind. We're not on pace or making what we would consider the equivalent of our competitors, which is something that at minimum should be taking place as well. We should um, be making sure that all the things, such as the full colas, are come into play. So, yes, we will get subject matter experts to help us out with that.
All right. The Executive Council seems to regularly vote on important issues and items by secret ballot. I personally believe that as elected representatives, the membership has the right to know how they are voting on items and the positions that they are taking and supporting. Would you support a resolution by the membership that banned the Executive Council from conducting votes in secret? And if not, please explain why you feel the practice is beneficial to the membership.
Transparency is important. Why? So, the answer to your question is yes, we expect our congressional people to vote in our best interest, and we want to know how they vote on any particular legislative bill, correct? You know, when we elect letter carriers uh, f- as union representatives and they go to Washington, D.C., such as myself and the national business agents and the other resident officers and trustees that are on the executive board, we're there to represent the interests of the letter carriers, not our own, the interests of the letter carriers. And so when we're casting votes on your behalf. And so transparency, knowing what and how each other voted, I don't have an issue with that. because credibility is your currency in this job. And how do you have credibility? One way is having transparency. So having uh, votes declared, I don't have an issue with that whatsoever.
I was wondering if either candidate has plans to try and get information to all regions on grievances and problems nationwide so that we are all fighting on the same front, instead of hearing that each district is different so we can't file the grievance the same way they did.
First and foremost, each grievance, you can have the same subject matter, but you can have different circumstances. You know, say, for example, you may have somebody that um, says there was a Article 8 violation. Now, is that an Article 8 violation? Someone was mandated. That constitutes a violation in and of itself if someone was mandated. But how the remedy is applied would depend on whether or not was it a full-time regular uh, mandated off of their assignment? Was it a full-time regular mandated on their own assignment, which then would determine whether or not what the auxiliary assistance would be like. Would it just be restricted to the overtime desired list, or would it be overtime desired list, PTS, and CCAs? So a lot of times when people think that, something is, everyone's got this particular remedy over in this other region, why aren't we getting it? Circumstances can be different. With all of that being said, the bottom line is that I am a proponent of having more uniformity and consistency amongst and throughout the NLC, throughout all 15 regions. That starts with, having a baseline, a standard of understanding what it is that we as a whole organization believe in and what we are going to be seeking in when it comes to the particular uh, violations. And there are you got 15 different MBAs, and they may see things a little different. But this is where it comes in, like I said, about trying to develop more uniformity. And doing so, I think, would help us out, the organization, and help the letter carriers out, because you would see more consistent uh, settlements or resolutions, and management would have an idea what we're dealing with. And then when if and should we have to go to arbitration, arbitrators that travel between the different regions would be a little bit more adept to what the NLC's position is on specific items.
All right. Now, of the 185,000 active members eligible to vote on the proposed tentative agreement, only 89,000 actually bothered to vote. What methods would each candidate use to try and capture the 96,000 non-voting contract members to vote for them for president?
This is not really a complex question, my brother. This is something that um, basic human nature is. When someone feels a part of something, they're more active, correct? And up until this particular point where this TA, even though this was substantially more that voted during this period of time than what it had in, say, previous general elections, we have been averaging about maybe 15% of our membership voting during general elections. This time we got close to 90% of the individuals that could vote for the tentative agreement did so. And this was a hot topic, as you know. This was something that was directly impacting every letter carrier financial ability to pay their bills and to have a decent standard of living. And still, we only got close to 50%. We have to do what we did here. One, make sure everyone is aware what it is that we're looking for and what is expected, and to hold the line and not be fearful of asking for what it is that we deserve and demand what it is that we deserve. And then making sure that we include and bring in by way of information and by inviting those letter carriers to be a part of and not feel disenfranchised. When you feel disenfranchised, people don't get involved and they don't vote. We don't want them to feel disenfranchised. We want them to know that we got their backs like vertebrae and that you are the union, not myself. A lot of times people don't vote because they think, what's the difference? They're going to do whatever they want to do anyway. Well, if you go into it with a defeatist attitude and you don't vote, then yes, it's basically the self-fulfilling prophecy. The individuals that did vote are going to have their way. And you'll say, see, but that's not the reality. I'm not the union, brother Joshua. No one at 100 Indiana Northwest Avenue is the union. No local president or NBA is the union. The rank and file members on the workroom floor that get up, dress up, and show up every single day to work, that is the union. And when they understand the power of their voice, when they understand the power of their involvement, then perhaps, just perhaps, it would incentivize them and more to get involved when they understand that they are, in fact, the ones that's the union, not me.
Well, that's well said. Should letter carriers have a right to strike?
Letter carriers should have the right to strike, should have the right to do whatever it is that they believe is going to be in their best interest. As of right now, we know that it is illegal for us to strike. So it's not something that can be negotiated. It's something that would have to be litigated. And once that happens, and if that's what the membership wants, then that's what occurs. And it really is that simple, my brother.
All right. Should locals be told to refrain from certain settlements from the national, like settling on cease and desist agreements?
No, they should, anyone that files a grievance, anyone that's seeking a remedy, should do exactly what Article 15 tells them to seek whatever remedy that it is that is considered appropriate. So if a cease and desist is appropriate remedy, then that's what you seek. If asking for a compensatory or escalated remedy is appropriate, that's what you seek. So no,
So you believe in the local parties having independent authority, eh?
the contract tells you that
Yep.
each party has the authority to settle their grievances.
All right. I like to hear that. What is the opinion on area wage colas since there are high expense areas like Hawaii and California?
My opinion here is I don't know if you are aware that this COLA issue, area wage, this has been around and has been debated over and over again. And it's been a pretty divisive issue because you have one segment of the NLC membership that feels that it's divisive for one reason or the other. So either because a paying one more than the other is dividing the union, and the others saying, well, me not having the ability to have the same purchasing power and have the same living standards that you have is divisive. My approach to that would be here is to ensure that our wages are sufficiently high enough and sufficient enough and significant enough that letter carriers are able to live wherever they are. And some obviously will perhaps do maybe a little better than others, depending on what cost of living area you're in. But this goes back to making sure that letter carriers are the industry leaders when it comes to wages, benefits, and working conditions, brother. Making sure that we have a sufficient living wage that no matter where you live, you can still have a decent standard of living.
All right. Now, should the national get involved in local lawsuits if they're being sued?
It's a local lawsuit. And I guess depending on the facts, circumstances, but by and large, I don't necessarily see, why we would get into why national would necessarily get into local lawsuits. That's something that you can have lawsuits for any given reason. And I mean, whether they're legitimate or not, but if you are fighting every uh, lawsuit, particularly there at the local level, that could be very taxing and redirecting your financial resources and your work resources from doing the things that are at that national level.
All right. Now, how important is one man, one vote, even though during the last negotiation, the National misunderstood why the contract was voted down?
One man, one vote is a staple when it comes to us. Our great Vincent Sobrato, President Emeritus, that was his calling card. One man, one vote. Let me put it to you, brother. Democracy ain't just when you agree with it. You know, it's everyone, the majority, every single person has a vote. This is what I was just saying a minute ago, that I am not the union. It is the rank and file letter carrier on the workroom floor. Every single individual has a say in this union. And so it is exceedingly important to have one man or one woman vote. It counts. Every single one counts.
All right. Now, will David Noble affect the elections if he runs with his past clean slate ticket?
But that depends, brother. You know, uh, anybody in this union has a right to run. You agree with that, correct?
Absolutely.
So I would not try and discourage Brother Noble or anyone else from running. If they so decides and they have honorable intentions and believe that they bring to the table what's in the best interest of letter carriers, then the membership would make that determination. So effect is relative, whether affected in a negative way or a positive way. That depends on who you see and what you believe in. What I do believe in is just like we were just talking about: one man, one vote, one woman, one vote. And so the membership would make that determination.
Now, could all three, Henry, Caref, and Noble, run on one slate, or is it not needed to beat the establishment?
Well, there has been no discussion about all three of us running on our slate. As you know from, or perhaps have heard, initially, uh, Caref was part of the CLC and chose to venture out on his own, which is his absolute right. God bless him. Noble David, has gone back for decades, been a representative and an advocate for justice with the NLC. And myself, my career, my record speaks for itself. Like I said, brother, I have 37 and a half years of represent letter carriers in some capacity, form, or another. And I think we all want the same thing. Now, whether it's together is is something that has not been discussed. However, I am about making sure that we understand that it should be more about the objective than it is about the man. I don't care whether it's noble care for myself. I am not running for national president because of any prestige. I am not running for national president because I want an office on the eighth floor at the NLC building. I am not running for national president because I want to see my name in lights or have some power that I don't have at the particular moment. I am running for change. I am running for the objectives of understanding that unity, accountability, transparency, credibility are things that are not of the bygone era. It is something that is real. And making sure that we understand that letter carriers are our first and foremost priority, that letter carriers are our chief concern. So that should be what everyone should be, in my view, focusing on the objective, making the change. Now, how that change is effective or affected is up to the individuals what they think is the best. But one thing that we should all have in common is making sure that we keep our eye on uh, change, and that's the objective, and not just one man.
All right. Now, for this question, there's a carrier trying to get your opinion on management wanting all load features to be considered street time credit. Do you think this seems to be in conflict with handling spurs in the office?
There's regulations that tells you how spurs should be handled, right? And whatever our postal regulations are is what should be applied. Currently, right now, we don't have a joint route inspection process, that sometimes they come up with memos and agreements about how this and that is going to be handled. But the M39 and M41 is clear of how spurs and everything are supposed to be handled. And if anything that's inconsistent, until the postal handbooks and manuals are changed, whatever those regulations are is what should be done. Period. Full stop.
So, next question. Assuming we're still in negotiations when either candidate wins, what would they ask for in terms of pay structure? What would the one pay table look like since table one is outdated? And what is your arbitration win rate?
All right, the pay structure, I believe, again, should consist of a starting wage that makes sure everybody is taken care of. One of the reasons that I voted no on the TA was because not only were the beginning areas, the beginning steps of it were, in my view, uh, deficient for the CCAs coming in, not making enough to really represent their worth. Letter carriers, CCAs do letter carrier work. Just because they're a CCA, they don't do an abbreviated job. They go out there and carry the same mail that we carry. They pay the same dues that we pay as a career and regular carriers. So their uh, starting wage should be commensurate with the work that we do and what we are deserving of as letter carriers. The one thing that a pay structure also should consist of not only having a sufficient living wage starting and all the way through, it should be one that represents a reasonable time of getting to your top step. When I first came in, it used to only take 8 years to get from the bottom step to the top step. Well, now it's 12 years. And those things of shorting the time frame, that will be a huge difference as well. Of not only having a higher starting wage, but shortening the length of time that it takes to get from the bottom step to the top step. And those things here start with good, sound plan going into contract negotiations and making sure that we convey that to management. And if they do not agree with that, that, hey, we'll see you in arbitration. I am a huge proponent that we should abolish the CCA provision. And until that time, such time that they have, then everyone should have a decent, a living wage, as I was speaking about earlier. However, we should have an all career workforce. And that pay structure should consist of that, an all career workforce. Make it a living wage with shorter steps to get from the bottom step to the top step.
All right. Is it mandatory to sign a non-disclosure for negotiations?
No.
All right, that was a quick one. All right, so when are we going to get paid what we're worth? We're called essential during COVID, but when it came time for raises, we got scraps, while UPS dock workers and law enforcement walked away with historic contracts. We delivered for this country through a pandemic and got nothing to show for it. Are you ready to fight for what we deserve? 50 plus at top step, 30 plus to start. No more CCAs, bring back the postal exam and raise the bar again?
Well, we're going to get what we asked for. You know, that's when we're going to get it. When we ask for it and demand it and stand on it. Stand on it 10 toes down, brother. The fact of the matter is, and here's, I want to make sure that everyone that's listening to me, including yourself here, is that I'm not proposing whatsoever or suggesting that I'm some wizard or anyone on the CLC got some magic wand. What I can promise you is that we will fight and we will ask for everything that it is that we deserve and demand it. And if we don't get it, it won't be due to lack of trying. That's what it will not be. It will not be due to lack of trying. We will not have a defeatist attitude. We will not go around spending time traveling the country trying to present a case as to why the Postal Service don't have the money to pay us. We will be telling the letter carriers and anyone else that listen, this is why we deserve to get paid. This is what we deserve to get paid. And that we're not going to stop until that occurs. If it takes us 1, 2, 3 times, whatever, it is going to be a first and foremost thing. James Carville, who is used to be a campaign manager for the Clinton back day, he says it's the economy, stupid. Well, it comes down to economics. Letter carriers work hard; they deserve higher pay. We deserve to get everything that's coming to us. So it's going to happen when we stand on what we claim that we believe and have convictions about. And that's making sure that letter carriers are the industry leaders when it comes to wages, benefits, and working conditions. Full stop. And don't accept anything less. And if management is unwilling to negotiate that with us, then we expeditiously go to arbitration and present our case before the arbitrator and not spend an inordinate amount of time telling individuals why we can't get paid. Here's the reality. Like any other industry, Postal Service, I know there's some criterias that some prerequisites sometimes, but they have the ability to raise their rates. We have been turning a profit here over the last several quarters. So it's not an issue of our product being deficient, but we are a service. And so a lot of times individuals will say, well, we had lost all these billions of dollars. We provide a service. It is basically a no not necessarily a no loss, no gain, but we operate at a level to be able to provide a service that's not any place else or any other company that you can think of that's going to make sure that every single customer, whether they can afford it or not afford it, is serviced. We deliver mail out to every address, rural, city, otherwise. But the bottom line is, my brother, we have to ask for it. And then we have to stand on that. And we have to make sure that the Postal Service knows that if they don't negotiate with us what it is that we're deserving, that they can expect expeditiously to go to arbitration.
All right. I like to hear that too. Now, if elected, can you work with other members of the previous administration you have disagreed with And if you lose, what's next? Would you return to carrying mail?
Absolutely can work with whoever is in the previous administration. If they still are in there, say they got some of them that may have been on another slate or so on. We are one union, the NALC, the National Association of Letter Carriers. Of course, a telltale sign of any leader is their ability to unify, to bring back. We can't get anything done. We cannot be effective if you're doing one thing and I'm doing something else. I talk all too often about my faith. And the Bible tells us that a house divided against itself cannot stand. Now, we can have disagreements and we can have a divide on what we think is sometimes the more effective way to do something. But once the play has been called, we all should join hands and move forward in the best interest of the letter carriers, because that's who we're representing. So if anyone that's there that remains, absolutely, let's work together. Let's move forward. We have a job to do, and that's to represent letter carriers.
All right. Now, if elected, would you consider bringing back the union podcast that read the postal record? Many carriers work long hours and they don't always have time to read the magazine.
Sure. I mean, anything that is in the best interest of our letter carriers always be under consideration.
In the postal record, I read about trainings. Now, originally, this question was asking about Leadership Academy, but I changed the context because of the fact that Leadership Academy is paid by National. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I changed the context a little bit to ask, to kind of keep the same type of question. So it says, in the postal record, I read about trainings that National puts on. I would love to attend these, but the cost is overwhelming to my branch. What's your plan to make vital training like this truly accessible to all carriers and not just those from larger branches?
One of the things is that I've been part of my platform, as you may have seen on concernlettercarriers.com on our website, is that I would reconstitute the director of education position. Um, it had been abolished up to this particular point in time. I think that is essential. I think that every single letter carrier, whether or not you are a certified representative, meaning a shop steward or elected official in the union, that everyone should have access to being educated on our union and our rules and regulations governing our union and governing the postal service, because you are only as strong as your weakest link. With the rank and file letter carriers should be able to identify just by observation if a violation occurred as well, and be well versed in that. And by doing so, we lead by example by educating our representatives in our craft. And we do that by making it accessible by not only offering training at the national level, but at the local level, compelling the the business agent's office with those regional administrative assistants, or RAs and RGAs and RWCAs, to not only um, just put together training there at the area or the regional level, but to also go down to the particular branches when there is a request or a need, and go to specific branches. If you have your branches saying we're going to go through route inspections come next week, then that branch should not have to wait until the next state convention or regional training to possibly get training when it comes to route inspection. If they request, then the business agent office should be sending somebody over there to help assist them and educate those letter carriers if should need be. We should be making sure that we move into the 21st century, making education and educational information available online as well. Even though I believe there's no substitute for in-person training because of the ability of mentorship and being able to ask questions and get an immediate answer in most instances, we should adapt and adjust to our current circumstances, meaning be electronically based and make it, and then having both local, regional, and national trainings on a consistent basis. And anyone that wants to be educated should have access to doing so.
All right. Brother Henry, you mentioned on a podcast that you are good friends with Eddie Davidson, Region 9 National Business Agent and fellow NALC Executive Council member. How would you address the issue of Eddie Davidson mistreating multiple city letter carriers if you had access to the facts and proof of his neglect of duty, violation of the Constitution, and gross misconduct?
Well, I will tell you here, I am good friends with Eddie Davidson. I think Eddie Davidson is a good business agent. I think he's a good person. And so I don't have any issues with that, and I won't back down or backtrack on that. I do know from being in a leadership position virtually all my entire adult life, meaning I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps. I was uh, in charge of men and women, you know, for their personal welfare, their moral welfare, their supervising when they job, and also during my union career. I've been a full-time representative with the union, the NLC, since '99, and have had the ability and the opportunity to uh, supervise and work with uh, men and women in so many different capacities. And by way of that, I am aware, and by experience, everyone isn't going to agree with you. You're not everybody's cup of tea. And so if there's a situation that anyone's done something that they feel is someone in the leadership position, whether it's Eddie, whether it's me, whether it's the national president, whether it's a fellow member. Our Constitution provides methods and ways of dealing with that. What I will always do, I will deal with stuff based on fact circumstances for each individual circumstances and whatever the rules and regulations governing that. I will not ever substitute my judgment for that of the evidence. I will never substitute right for wrong. I know that our job is politically based a lot of times. It's the nature of the business, but I'm a principle based brother and principle based person. I'm going to always do what I believe is right, even if it's difficult to do.
All right. Now, this next question is it looks like he's asking for advice. It says to James Henry, as someone who has had a long career in the Postal Service, back when you used to walk or drive the beat, how strict were you when it came to following the M41 and any other carrier duties? Did you used to check your truck daily and fill out all the forms and knock on doors to hand customers their packages? And do you believe there's some leeway to be given when it comes to working and carrying your route correctly?
Brother, didn't you just hear me say that I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps? The Marine Corps, anyone knows, holds you to the highest standards of integrity, higher standards of performance and executing your duties. So for me, which was directly asked how I did, if that was the regulation, then that's what I did. I made sure that I did knock on the door where there's parcel delivery. I did make sure that I followed whatever the rules were when it came to executing my job as a letter carrier. And I encourage everybody else to do so because there's no reason to. You know why, Brother Joshua?
How come?
You know, because you're on the clock.
Yep, exactly. Yeah,
There's no reason for you. When I have carriers tell me, man, that I was so far behind and I didn't, they got a piece of discipline for not curbing their wheels. Yes, and I know that you're supposed to curb your wheels. You know, you're supposed to lock your vehicle and not leave it vehicle running and things of that nature when you're executing your duties. He said, but I was running behind and so on. Well, I've never known anybody in my entire career And I don't know anyone that told me or can say that they know anyone that's been fired for taking too long. Long
Now
as they
that
don't come out there, long as they don't come out there and catch you sitting under the tree and not uh, performing your duties, you're going to be all right. All you have to do is make sure that you follow the rule that if you cannot make it, that you call them and you inform them. Simple as that.
well, that's that you mentioned something earlier. That's my favorite part about following management's instructions because if you follow everything in the handbooks and manuals, your route's going to be 8 hours or more. So you're never going to have a problem with being added to as long as you follow in the handbooks and manuals because all their instructions make it take more time, not less.
Absolutely. And people don't understand seemingly how that affects you overall because when you, for example, just for the sake of numbers, say you have 10 routes in the office and you have annual leave, say, based on 10% or of letter carriers in there. So that would be one route. I mean, one vacation slot. But let's say uh, you doing everything that you're supposed to do and you're following all the rules and you have to add additional routes that give you additional vacation time. Not only that, like I said here, it makes your life that much easier because when they cut those routes, or you're able to request a route inspection and get the routes cut and you're not out there under these time constraints trying to deliver 10 hours worth of mail within 8 hours, it makes your work life just a little bit better. So by following all those rules and regulations, it has a rippling effect. So absolutely, and I'm encouraged, follow it. There's no reason. Why, Brother Joshua? Because you're on the clock.
Absolutely. Yeah, the best stability is dependability, right?
Absolutely, brother. The best ability is dependability.
Now, James Henry, you have organized and trained the future leaders that come to Washington, D.C. for education. How important is an educated union member? Also, when you make statements on media, internet, or written in articles, it seems like you pull back from strong criticism and emotional opinion on matters. Can this be misconstrued as not having passion in your beliefs?
No, it cannot be misconstrued as having passion in my beliefs. The one thing is, brother, that's been my claim to fame, is that I'm all about it. Hey, I have done nothing but uh, bled bled letter carriers from day one, being in the letter carrier, being a representative for the NLC. The reality of it is that yes, I have been teaching and training letter carriers at all levels of the NLC, from the local level to the regional level to the national level. And we have had the opportunity to literally to train thousands of leaders and letter carriers. Having an educated workforce is crucial. It's crucial. You need to know what the rules of the game is so you can be able to operate properly, so you can be able to be successful in getting what it is that we have coming to us that is deserving of the letter carriers. When it comes to insisting on justice, when it comes to insisting on your rights being observed, you cannot be ignorant to what the rules are and be ignorant to what's expected of management. An educated workforce is exceedingly important. And so my passion for the letter carriers is second to none. I don't care what anyone say, anyone that knows me, that sees that you that sees what I've done and where I've been and that knows me knows that my postal record articles, there's a place and time for everything. I write about a particular subject matter. It's not about pulling back about being criticizing anyone. Anyone that read my postal record articles can see, for the most part, I like to inspire letter carriers. I like to inspire future leaders. Almost everything that you see that I write, for the most part, is inspirational My most recent article that I just wrote here that's coming out here for the October article is Am I My Brother's Keeper? Do we stand up for one another, encouraging each other to understand that we have a responsibility to one another, to look out for one another? The one before that was join the fight. Get in there and fight for what you believe in. You know, so no, it's not about shying away from any kind of criticism, whatever. That's not how I roll. What I roll is making sure that you understand that we got your back and that there is a time and place for everything and to be encouraged. I don't believe that you can clean the pig and be in the mud with it. You set the example. And like my pastor used to say, you're not accountable for how people treat you, brother. You're only accountable for how you treat others. And so no matter what anybody does, I'm not a person that engage in profane language. Anyone that's been around me know that. It's not that I look down on anyone that does that. It's just not what I do. Just like how I don't look down on anyone that drinks or smokes. That's just not my thing. So James Henry is going to be James Henry 100% of the time. And I know that a lot of folks may uh, expect union representatives to stand up and jump up and down on top of the table and huff and puff and cuss. I will huff and puff when the time is necessary to huff and puff. I will stand my ground. I will make sure that I have an attitude of absolute nonsense or a no nonsense attitude, and making sure that when there's a the time to fix band that's in charge, that's what we do. So, brother, the one thing that no one has to ever worry about when it comes to me, because my record speaks for itself, is making sure that I have the passion and the love for the letter carriers.
All right. Now, this next question is not my personal opinion. It was just sent in, just to let you know. But it says, why are you so comfortable letting Corey Walton do most of the talking for you?
And that is absolutely someone that's uninformed. Corey Walton has a podcast that he created from A to Arbitration that he's on there on a weekly basis. Just like I'm on your podcast here, I go to different podcasts. I've been on Classes of Mail. I've been on here, been on the New Carrier Generation, Next Generation Carriers. I've been on CCA Corners. I've been doing and making sure, and I go around to the different branches and I speak. I speak for myself. I don't have anyone speaking for me. If there's questions that someone has, it's like here. I didn't ask you to censor or delete any of these questions that you had for me today, did I?
Nope, you didn't.
No, no, because brother, the truth needs no proof. It stands on its own, and that's the one thing that you'll always get from me is the truth. So and honesty. So Corey doesn't speak for me. Nobody speaks for me. Corey is perhaps he has a overall maybe a louder bullhorn because of his from A to arbitration uh, podcast, but he and I are on the same page when it comes to ensuring the welfare of the letter carriers are, uh, are sought after and that we are placing them first. So he's on his podcast, and that's perhaps the only thing that I can say. Anyone that perhaps would have that perception, but it's absolutely not true.
All right. Now, for this next segment, we will be asking you some short, rapid fire questions, either multiple choice or fill in the blank. And don't forget, this is an official interview, so you must be truthful and forthcoming about your answers.
Man, I'll always be honest and truthful with you, brother.
Yeah. Now, do you carry your satchel across or do you carry it on one shoulder?
One shoulder, on the left shoulder specifically,
Now, do
when I
you
used to
prefer?
carry bell.
Oh, okay. Do you prefer carrying in the winter or the summer?
I prefer summer. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, brother. That good weather, you cannot beat it.
Man, compared to Michigan, you guys have summer or summer, you know?
Hey, yes, yes, exactly. It is sunny year round for the most part.
All right. McDonald's or Burger King?
McDonald's,
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Trek,
Tupac or Biggie?
Tupac,
All right. Favorite football team?
Raiders, JWB, just win, baby.
All right. What pizza would you order?
I like the sausage and pepperoni.
All right. What type of style? Just regular?
Yes, I like the regular, not the thin crust, and certainly not the thick crust. I like the regular.
Now, here's the last question. Is there anything else you would like to add?
What I like to add is that I want everybody to know this simple thing is that don't apply the purity test to me or any leader that you have. Everyone has their ills and has their flaws, but what I do have, I don't claim to be perfect, but what I do have is a perfect heart with perfect intentions. Intend to make sure that the letter carriers are placed first. Intend to make sure letter carriers know that we got their back like vertebrae. Intend to make sure that we do not fall down on our responsibility. Intend to make sure that the credo that I live by here, dependability is the best ability, because it matters not, brother, how smart you are, how gifted you are, how anything. If you cannot be relied upon, it doesn't mean anything. And we can look back and see over most recent times that we was depending on our leadership to, at the very least, adhere to the will of the membership. We was relying upon that. And when that did not happen, it caused a ripple effect or a kind of like a tsunami of despair that overtook carriers' faith in the NLC and the union, because it said, what's the point? We already voted in things that seemingly people did what they want to do anyway. The reality of it is here, brother, is that I am, like I stated earlier, running because solidarity, unity, transparency, accountability, and a sense of duty is paramount in this job. You cannot do this job if you do not have credibility. One of the two of the most pressing characteristics that should be in any leader is trustworthiness and sound judgment. If people don't trust you, they're not going to follow you. And if people don't follow you and you turn around and look back and nobody's there, you're not leading. You're just out for a walk. So we got to make sure that we restore credibility. We got to make sure that we restore trustworthiness and that you exercise sound judgment, not just making a decision. People make decisions all day, every day, but exercising judgment, doing what you know is right, even when it may be unpopular, doing what you know is right, because there is no substitute for someone knowing that at least you fought for them. At least you understood where they was coming from. And so when it comes down to the CLC, when it comes down to me, brother, we have got to bring this car back to the center of the road. I have been doing arbitrations for decades. I have been in arbitration, hundreds of arbitrations, and I have almost an 85% win rate. That means almost 9 out of 10 times you go into arbitration, we've been successful. But why is that? Because it goes back to a lot of the questions that you was asking here earlier about an educational workforce. Well, it's not that I'm such a genie, you know. Like, you just grant everybody wishes. Everybody wish to win, but it requires every level to do their job. When the shop steward properly investigates, it gathers the information to determine whether there is or is not a grievance per Article 15, and proceeds with that grievance. And then the formulary representative writes competent and detailed statements of fact, not opinion, but of facts. And we go forward, and we're able to succeed because no matter what, it's like a conductor. I say I consider myself like a conductor when I was in arbitration, is that it don't matter how great of a conductor you are, that conductor can only make that music sound as good as the notes on that page. A representative at arbitration or even at the national can only do as well as what those grievances that were beneath them and the things that we have accomplished by way of decisions at the national level, enforcing those items consistently. And when it comes down to it, I am all about nothing but doing the job of representing letter carriers. And once we understand that that's our duty and not some fake report that we think that we may have over there on LaFleur Plaza, we will cooperate with management when necessary and when we can. But we will never, ever, ever capitulate. We will never, ever sell our soul. We will never, ever go along to get along. We will make sure that our letter carriers are our first and foremost priority and our chief concern. And that's one of the kind of people that I'm surrounding myself with, and that we as an NLC should have going forward. Because no matter what, my brother, it don't matter what branch number you have. What precedes every branch number is the acronym NALC, National Association of Letter Carriers. That means that even though you got a bunch of branches, we're one trunk. We got one union. And when we see ourselves as one union with one purpose and one mission on one accord, there's nothing that we can't do to be successful. And even when we have setbacks, sometimes setbacks are just a setup for a comeback. And that's what we got to have our attitude, is to never stop trying, never stop fighting for what it is that we believe in. I'm grateful and appreciative for this opportunity that you gave me today to be able to address you and these letter carriers and whoever else that may listen to this. The reality of it is, brother, is that we have a long way to go. We got a job to do, and we're up for the job. And once everybody stand together and we unify, we can get this job done. We can get it done. We can get letter carriers the wages that they are deserving and demanding at this point, and rightfully so. We can do it, and we will. Take care, brother, and God bless you.
Now, one more thing. One more thing. I agree with you. We can do anything all together. I think we can get anything accomplished. But I do have one more question before we let you go. Now, this is not going to be subject to disciplinary action, so you can answer freely. But who's your favorite postal podcaster?
My favorite postal podcaster. I have I have several. I love my man, obviously, Corey. I love my man, Ron Speakman. Those two jump off the top of my head right now.
Awesome.
But I
All
think
right.
everybody plays a role. And one thing that you've seen has been a huge increase in podcasting, such as you got you now, you have the new carrier generation of carriers, you have CCA corners, everybody, it has played a huge role of being able to educate letter carriers and have them informed. And this is how you're able to make sound decisions, is to be informed. And I want to encourage you, brother, to keep doing what you're doing. And all the other podcasters that's out there to keep doing what they're doing, because the more the merrier. And we all, like I said, here for the same purpose.
Well, there you have it. one successful interview down. Now you can listen to the other one and make your choice. Listen closely because it's going to be your choice this year. I'm also going to do one surprise thing. Maybe I'll extend this to whoever's running on the establishment's ticket. If anyone has access to Brian Renfro or whoever's actually going to run this year, let them know. They can come on the podcast too, answer the same questions, because I'll give them the same respect, give them the floor to speak on, and then everyone can make their own informed decision. Hopefully you learned something valuable today. And as always, have a good day.
Out to the Roseville Wrecking Ball. He is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God. We need Article 8 scholars right now. The Grievous Genius and the Roseville Wrecking Ball doing amazing work.
Brothers and sisters, this guy is good, man. He's fucking good.
And my boy Joshua, he killed it. Man, he's lockstep right now. He's killing it.
You would think this guy has been around for 30 fucking years. That's how good he is. Yeah, it's like he won the contract.
Shout out to Josh.